First. Well, I was off air, of course, there was much needed change in the Victorian Liberal Party. Not only was Moira Deeming finally reinstated to the Liberal Party room, she was, of course, always staying on as a member, but she's now back in the fold after that massive court win against John Pesutto. But his colleagues also voted to remove him as leader and in his place select a man from the outer suburbs of Melbourne, former police officer Brad Battin. Well, who is Brad Battin? Is he up to the job of uniting a battered Liberal Party and taking up the fight to Labor? I'm pleased to say that man, Brad Battin, joins me now, the new opposition leader in Victoria. I know you've been everywhere in the media over the last couple of weeks. It's been just a fearsome pace. I made reference there, you're from the outer suburbs of Melbourne. You're the first Liberal leader in Victoria to come from that outer suburban belt, but they're the seats the Libs need to win government. How's it going to change the way you lead the Liberal Party?
I think out there, obviously I've come from a background police working in those local communities. They're an aspirational voter, and I think sometimes we haven't treated them that way. A lot of the communities out there, I've been with them struggling through the cost of living and all the things we can talk about in there. But the reality is, I speak the same as them. I've worked with those communities. I've coached their kids in football. I was the paper boy in Berwick at the age of 12, walking up and down the street, and I've seen the changes of those outer suburban areas. Really important, not just there, out in the west, up in the north. These are the new areas of Victoria where the votes are going to be. These are the new seats. There's going to be more seats in these areas than inner Melbourne as we grow and continue to grow in Melbourne. I'm one of them.
So you're not a political operator, you're not someone who blew into that seat just because you wanted to run to Parliament?
No, I'm born and bred. I lived in Harkaway and Berwick. My parents, I was born at Noble Park Hospital in the seat of Mulgrave, believe it or not, and then brought up in the seat of Harkaway, or the electorate of Harkaway. It was a really beautiful area to be raised. I understood how important community was. To raise kids, we always talk about, you need the village to raise a family. We actually had that, Diane Olzak, who was the neighbour down the road, would yell at me if I did something wrong. It wasn't just mum and dad.
Yeah, I grew up in a country town, I know what you're talking about.
But I think that's actually what made me. Like I'd say, I've got my mum and dad's values. My parents are fantastic. They live up in Queensland now. They've retired up that way. But that whole community, I could name nearly every person in that street that was part of the discipline action, part of the support community. And I think we have moved a long way away from that. But these growth corridors, they're screaming out for it. They just want a community that works together, that they feel safe in. And I think we need to make some major changes around that.
You mentioned you're a police officer. You come from a family of police officers. You also, this is interesting, you left school at 15. Later on, you go back and you do higher education and you get to where you are now. But I think that's a lived experience of a lot of people. Crime, law and order, it's huge in Victoria, not just in Melbourne, but right across the board. I caught up with a family friend last weekend. They've been broken into 3 times. Aggravated burglary, which is burglary, of course, as a copper, when you're in the home. It was like home invasions. The last one was a gang of 7. So mum, dad and 2 teenage girls are at home. A gang of 7 comes over their fence. You're in the top job. Put yourself there. You're in there, one Treasury place. How do you fix it? And fix it fast. How do you fix it?
Priority, first thing you got to do is fix the bail. If you continue to tell kids that you can commit violent offences, break into someone's home when they're home, and you can go home that afternoon from court, then you're sending the wrong message and they're going to continue to do it. So we've said we'll introduce that as our priority if we get into Parliament. The second thing is give the police the resources they need and ensure that the structure around...
So fix the pay deal, move on, fix the pay deal.
And fill the 1,100 vacancies that they've currently got, but actually say to the police, your priority is to protect the community. Now, the Victoria Police have many other departments. We need to reallocate a lot of them to making sure that the police are on the beat and on the street. One van through all of that Paran and Malvern area is not good enough. We need to make sure that we've got more vans on the road to respond when you're calling. That'd be our priorities.
So less police bureaucracy, or less attention to the woke and more where it matters?
100%. We've got to get them back on the street. I was in Dandenong. We used to have 3 vehicles on the road almost all the time. They struggle to get all their vans out. We had proactive police patrols, walking the streets, on the bikes, engaging with kids, building respect. All of that's gone. And until you get that back, it's going to be really difficult to actually have the long-term changes in crime reduction you need.
The other thing, of course, is when I get around over summer, I look like Peta Credlin. So people come up and tell me, what's top of mind. The other huge issue is tax. Not just property taxes, the B&B taxes coming, the empty holiday home taxes. I mean, the Victorians are drowning in taxes. Please don't tell me you're stuck with Labor's taxes if we vote Liberal. What can you do about this stuff? Are you prepared to have a crack?
Yeah, you've got to go and review all the taxes to start with, but the priority is if you're going to grow the economy, you can't continue to tax every person that's tried to go and make something of their life. We spoke about property taxes. Most investors are firefighters, police officers, teachers, and they get penalised just for trying to protect themselves and have an opportunity investment. We need to look at the Airbnb tax. How unfair is the Airbnb tax? Not only just for everyday families who want to go on holiday, a lot of people who have someone in the house who's living with a disability have to use Airbnb because it gives them an opportunity to go to the beach. Now they're being charged 7.5% extra because this government's nearly broke. So we have to review all these taxes. But at the end of the day, the Liberal value will come through. We want to be a state of less tax so we can create more investment here in Victoria. That creates jobs and the return is in dividends to the state itself.
What about gas? Do you hate gas like Labor, or are you prepared to have gas in the system?
Love gas, got gas at home. I think it's best to cook with, to be honest. I've spoken to some of the restaurants in Melbourne. We've got new high-rises where the government's trying to say to them they're not going to put gas on, but we want an Asian restaurant at the bottom of it who needs gas just to actually operate. We will have a focus on gas. We'll continue to gas exploration. We're very public on that. We will fight for gas in Victoria because we know it's best for the environment and it's actually best for people's power bills.
Internally, the party and your colleagues, you've got a big job to unite a broken team. All credit to you, and I say this to my audience at home, you backed Moira all the way through. You're always in her camp. You've put Moira Deeming back into the party room, which is important for unity, but it says to all the women who vote for Liberal or are supportive of Liberal values that you're willing to take a stand on women's issues and our access to single-sex toilets and change rooms and all the things that matter. Where do you see the role of someone like Moira from Melbourne's West in the future? Yeah,
Moira's really important. And much like my suburbs out in the city of Casey and Cardinia, she's out in the West. These are families that have been neglected for such a long period of time. The important issues they're talking about really are that they talk about cost of living, crime, they talk about the infrastructure they're neglected on, but they care about their kids. Their family values. There's a lot of religion out through that West area. It's not all just Catholic. We've got Hindus, we've got Muslims. There's so many different religions out there who focus on the fact that they want to have the right to raise their kids the way they want to without government interference. That's where Moira is really important. She can go out, talk to them, communicate with them and tell them our values are your values. Your future is going to be built on the fact that a Liberal Party can ensure that we protect your rights at home to raise the kids, your kids, the way you want to without interference from an education department that wants to send them one way or a government that wants to interfere in your life.
Are you going to be able to stay authentic?
It's a big challenge, I know. Someone's already told me that, the things
because you are authentic, right?
I try.
I
try to be the real deal. And I said it the other day, this is me and this is what I hope to be when I get to the election. I've already had people tell me, buy a new suit or do your hair differently or someone told me to straighten my teeth. Well, my teeth are staying the way they are. I'll probably have messy hair some days. Some days I'll be unshaven and some days I'll get caught swearing down at the pub. That's who I am. And if I change that, the day I change it is the day for me to get out of politics because then I'm not who I actually was elected to be.
Breath of fresh air, Brad Battin, all the best.
Thank you very much.